Hi folks, welcome to Testing Angular Services. Let's make a start by taking a quick look at the reference application that we'll be adding tests for. It's a really basic little app I put together called Notes, which is used to compose and read simple plain text notes. The test directory is where we'll be adding our tests. The structure of the subdirectories in here mirrors the structure within the app folder. There's also a coverage directory here where Karma creates a coverage report for our app, and we'll take a look at this in a bit more detail later on. We'll be using Jasmine and Sinon to write our tests because this is a great and very common setup for unit testing in JavaScript. We'll use Karma to run the tests from the command line because doing this is much quicker than messing about with a browser. There is already a test directory with a subdirectory for unit tests, and in here we have the Karma configuration file and all of the test files. The root test folder also contains a special Angular file used for testing purposes called Angular mocks. So let's make a start. First of all, let's just get rid of the example test file in the controllers directory here. And let's create a new directory in here called services. Let's create a new test file. The name of this file should match the name of the service that it's testing, but end in .spec.js. We're going to add tests today for the local storage service, so let's call the new file localstorage.spec.js. We can start out with a standard IFI here to keep the code isolated from the global scope and make sure the code is running in strict mode. So the first thing that we need to do is to load the module for the app, which we can do using Jasmine's beforeach method. We use the global module method to load the notes module, and that's the same module used by the app. So next we can use Jasmine's describe method to create a new test suite. The first argument is a string describing the test suite. The second argument is a callback which the tests in the suite can be added to. There will be some common variables that we'll want to use in most, if not all, of the tests in this suite, so let's define these first. The service we're testing is the local storage service, and this service uses Angular's window service, so we'll want to use this in our tests as well. The sandbox variable is used for Sinon. We need to do some more setup now. We can use Jasmine's beforeach method to do it. We need to use the inject method here, which is provided by the Angular mocks file, and we use this to inject the services that we want to test and any dependencies. So for this test, we'll need to inject the local storage service itself and the window service. Now we need to store the injected services into the variables that we added at the start and set up Sinon's sandbox. These services are injected with underscores at the start and end because otherwise we wouldn't be able to save the parameter to a variable of the same name. Angular knows to unwrap these services for us ready to use. We'll use the sandbox for any mocking or stubbing that we need to do as we write our tests, and we can create this easily enough using the sandbox.create method of the global Sinon object. As well as the beforeach method, Jasmine also provides the aftereach method to do any tidying up after each test runs. We can use this to reset the sandbox so that it's fresh for the next test. We use the restore method of the sandbox to restore any objects inside it that are being stubbed back to their original state. We're now ready to start writing some tests. The service that we want to test has three methods: support storage, get notes, and save notes. Let's add a test for the supports storage method first of all. So we've created a new suite here to contain the tests just for the supports storage method, and we described this using a period and parentheses at the end as if we were invoking the method. So let's use Jasmine's it method now to define a single test case. The method that we're testing uses the hasOwnProperty method of the Windows service to determine whether local storage is supported. PhantomJS supports local storage, so by default the supports storage method should return true. So let's run this test from the command line, and we can use the grunt test command to do that. And we find that the test passes, and we see a short coverage summary in the console output here. I've also got Jasmine coverage configured to create a HTML report in this project. So if we head into the coverage directory, we should find that there's a report-html directory, and in here there's an index.html page. Let's just run that. If we go into the services part of the report and into the service that we're testing, we can see exactly which lines of the original file are being exercised and therefore have coverage. Let's add another test now. This time we can test that the method returns false if local storage is not supported. We need to stop the hasOwnProperty method of the window object. We can use the Synon sandbox to do this. We use the stub method of the sandbox to stub the method. The first argument is the object the method we want to stub belongs to, and the second argument is the name of the method as a string. We can also chain the returns method after the stub method to specify what the stubbed method should return, which in this case is false. So now we can make another assertion. So this time the method should return false. Let's try running the test from the command line again. Now we have two tests and they both pass. So now we've completely tested one of the methods exposed by the service. Let's test one more before we wrap up for today. And we can add a new test suite for this. This time we're going to test the getNotes method. The way that this method works is that it retrieves a string of JSON from local storage and uses Angular's fromJSON method to parse this into an array containing objects representing the user's notes. So now let's add a test case. The way this method works is that it retrieves a string of JSON from local storage and uses Angular's fromJSON method to parse this into an array containing objects representing the user's notes. First, we need to create some mock JSON data. We can then stub the getItem method of local storage this time to make it return our test JSON. And lastly, we can make our assertion. We just need to check that the length of the array returned by the getNotes method is 1, which is the number of empty objects that we placed into the test array. We should probably also test for when there is no item called notes in local storage. This test is easy because by default there won't be an item in local storage called notes, so we can just test that the method returns null. There's still one method left to be tested. I'll leave this as an exercise for you to complete on your own. So in this course we saw how to unit test an Angular service. We saw that there are certain things that we need to do, such as get the module used by the app and inject the service that we want to test, as well as any services that our service uses. We also saw how to set up a Synon sandbox ready for us to stub methods with, and how to use Jasmine to create test suites and test cases. If you get stuck and you're seeing errors or weird test results in the console, the repository contains a branch called service-tests, so just check out that branch and take a look at the code in there. I'm Dan Wellman. You can reach me on Twitter using @DanWellman. From all of us here at Tuts Plus, thanks for watching.